Okay, folks, welcome to GTHLCanada.com. I'm Peter Curtis, once again on the airwaves, and today we are celebrating International Women's Day. So I've got Susan Irving, Erin Needra, and in full disclosure, Stephanie Hyde is my work teammate who was going to conduct the interview because we should have a woman conducting an interview, but she was so good in our rehearsals. Steph, I'm giving you a compliment. We turned you to someone who's going to answer questions today. So
Well, I'm
thanks
looking
for
forward to it.
Awesome. So Susan, I'm going to start with you. Your role at Leaside means that you are the president. Now, in real life, being the president of something's a big deal. In Canada, where everyone thinks they know something about hockey, why would anyone want to be the president of a hockey association?
Good question. I found myself in this role because when my first son started playing hockey at Leaside, he tried out for our tyke team back then and made it. My husband ended up signing me up to be the manager. And at that point, I was like, okay, no big deal. Being a manager is probably, like house league soccer. All you have to do is put a spreadsheet together and make sure that each parent on the team is responsible for a game to bring oranges and granola bars to the game. So that's what I thought it would be for hockey. Lo and behold, I didn't know it meant managing a $30,000 team budget, booking buses, tournaments, exhibition games, ice. It's a big job being a manager of a team. So that happened. And then I got tapped by Grant Warden, who used to be the president of Leaside as well, to join to run our select program. So I've been on the board now for 7 years, running select, the tournament, as well as GTHL, and in my second and last year as president of the board. So really, as president, it really is running a not-for-profit organization. And, if we go to our mandate, it's about making sure that we offer fun hockey for everyone. It's making sure that we're cost effective. It's making sure that we have enough money in the reserve. It's making sure that we have the right coaches living up to our mission statement, and developing kids so that they are active physically and both mentally, and can achieve their goals. And also just, being that reputable organization in our community.
Okay, that's great. And I mean, just so people know, Leaside has 2-year terms. So Susan, you're not being thrown out the door or anything like that. It's just a great way to keep people involved. So now you've been the president. Have you had any other women come to you and say, well, let's see if I can get involved in being on the board, or what do I need to be on the board? I mean, have you opened the door to some other women to go from team manager, which moms are great, but there are some moms that should be in those leadership roles as well with hockey associations?
Great question. I mean, Leaside Hockey Association, we are co-ed. Obviously, it's more of a boys organization, but we do have female players and we do have female coaches within our organization. At one point, they typically go over to the Wildcats, which is the Leaside Female Hockey Association at the older years, but we do have a lot of girls in the association at a younger age. And a lot of coaches, which is awesome, given that we're a not-for-profit and we don't pay our coaches. When it comes to the board, so I've actually been on the board now for 7 years. We do 2 3-year terms. We ended up adjusting the bylaws, given COVID, for me to stay on 1 more year, just given we had a lot of new people on the board. That being said, Leaside Hockey Association started in 1962. I'm the first female president they've had, which is exciting. We've had a few women in the past on the board. This year, which is exciting, is we actually have Megan Rogers, who runs our VP of sponsorship, Catherine Shaw, who's our VP of ICE, Alison Gerson, who is our legal counsel and secretary. So we actually have, and then myself. So we actually have 4 women on our board, which is exciting. So it helps with diversity, and not just diversity in terms of men and women. It also helps with diversity of thought when we think about how to grow the association and making the right decisions. So it is exciting to see, 11 board spots that we actually have. We have 4 females on the board.
Well, that's fantastic. So, Erin, I'm going to bring you in here because you are our youth sports athlete, and I won't give away your age by referring to what it was back then. So we're going to call you a university athlete. Getting involved in hockey. I mean, when you were playing hockey, obviously you were there for the love of the game. You're chasing your education, and then all of a sudden you end up being a hockey mom with 3 kids and take on coaching. How do you decide which kid you're going to coach when you have 3 of them?
Well, that's lucky because you coach your first one first, right?
Okay.
So like you said, I have a background in playing hockey, and I come from a family where both my father and my mother were both involved in managing, coaching, all those kinds of things. So when my daughter went to North Toronto, and she started in her type year, similar to Susan's son, and I was able, it just made sense for me to put up my hand. So I got involved, and I got involved on the ice, not really knowing that there weren't a lot of women who were coaching at that time. I sort of went in a little bit blindly, to be honest, and it worked out really well. And so, it has evolved from sort of a trainer role with my daughter and being on her bench for 3 years, and then now with my son, who is 2 years younger, and I was able, have become the head coach of his team a few years ago, and now I'm coaching in the GTHL, which again, there aren't a lot of women in the GTHL who coach, but I think, part of it is that you remember why you're there, right? You remember that you're there to develop the players. You remember that you're there as a role model, and, representation is important. It's vital for girls and for boys to see women in the, women as athletes and women in prominent figures in sport, right? So I think it's really good for the whole team. As Susan mentioned, North Toronto is also a co-ed team, but it is predominantly boys. And it's good for them to see both. Now on my team, our NTAA Adam team, we actually have 3 girls on our team this year, and we had 1 girl last year. So there may be something to the fact that they have a women coach, and it's a very friendly environment. And then we also have I also have a great support staff, in the my co-coaches and my manager and the parents. Everyone works together, and that's really important to have an inclusive type of environment.
No,
Everyone has to buy into it.
Well, that's fantastic. And I have a daughter who does not want to play with just girls because she wants to play with boys that she goes to school with in soccer. So I see where you're coming from. Now, Stephanie, I left you last. I've already given you a compliment as my work teammate. You're a player, coach, and you had a short officiating career, which you don't want to talk about because I can't sucker you into referee when we're really desperate for a referee. But I mean, you've ended up in a role at the GTHL, predominantly boys hockey, as much as people don't want us to say boys, and you're in the role of development, and you turn around and you're like, hey, I'm the only female in this role, maybe in the province, maybe in Canada. I mean, does it feel a little unique to be at the GTHL in this position as a woman?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a kind of unique experience, but I also do feel like there are a lot of administrators out there that are women running minor hockey organizations like Susan, for example, and people don't necessarily recognize that. In our office alone, I know that it's about a 50-50 split on women. So I think there's a lot of support from women, but also the men in the office and in leadership positions. It makes it kind of an easy transition and role to be kind of growing the sport of hockey and running development programs for boys and girls as well. as
Yeah,
they both mentioned, that it's a co-ed or organization. So that's great.
yeah, especially at House League, we see a lot of females and girls on teams there and all the clubs. So Susan, I was going to ask you now. You're the president of an association that House League, Select, Single A, Double A. I mean, pre-pandemic, what was your biggest concern for your House League's well-being? I mean, was it the cost? I always hear about that, but what other issues were you saying? I'm the president of this amazingly large organization, and this is what's worrying me about the future.
Yeah, a great question. Leaside hockey, over the years, we're proud of what we've been able to do for hockey in this community. We are one of the largest hockey associations in Canada, and have grown our program substantially. We've got, the max amount of GTHL teams we're allowed, so 18 double A, single A teams. We've got 30 select and CDS teams. CDS is our half ice program. So a big program. And then obviously we've got Learn to Play and House League. When you are developing sport, our job is to get as many kids active in it in the pipeline, if you will, right? Because we always talk about that base, right? Our job as a minor hockey association is to really build that base, get as many kids as we can into the sport, so that you're building that pyramid to Hockey Canada and to the NHL draft and what you will, right? Like the cream of the crop, so that kids can dream and have that ability. And if they just want to have fun and continue at a certain level, that's really important too. I think what we've seen over the years in Toronto, my biggest concern is, we've got changing demographics, right? Our population in Canada is getting older. Families are not having as many children as they used to be. And we're seeing our growth in Canada, and specifically in Toronto, through immigration. And, if you look at who's coming to our country and who's coming to Toronto, hockey was not the sport that they played in their hometowns. So it's really about making sure that we have proper outreach to get children in the game. And yes, cost, right? We're looking at different things to think about. Instead of signing up for a season, do you think about doing what soccer does and other programs where you only sign up for Learn to Play for an 8-week perspective versus having to sign off for a full year? Because hockey is expensive. And when you look at community hockey, you want to have it within the community. And that's where, ice is at a premium. So there is a cost, right? There's cost of the equipment, there's cost of the ice, there's cost of the instructor. So we do have to do in terms of our organization of, doing what we can to ensure we're making it as cost effective as possible for every player within our organization. But, Peter, to really answer your question, I think it's really, how do we continue to build that base? Because if we don't have a base, we won't have select teams, we won't have GTHL teams, and we won't feed the system.
Yeah, it's about getting kids involved. Now, Erin, I'm going to call on you because you've taken on a role in hockey that's, I won't say dry, it's challenging, and that's being part of our transition game pillars. So the transition game took place in November of 2019. You're volunteering with a lot of great people to try and get the sport on the proper path. And you're part of something called the child-centric side, right? I mean, what Susan was talking about. So can you tell us about the challenges there? I mean, you're working with a diverse group of people. They all want what's best for kids, but it's hard to get on the same page sometimes, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think, though, what you said is right, that people want to make change, though. I think that's where the transition game is, it's the kind of the right time, right place right now. People have recognized, as Susan said, that you need to have a more diverse and inclusive environment in hockey. There's talk about it as high up as the GTHL all the way, sorry, as high as the NHL all the way through. So it's the right time to be talking about this. And to make, hockey child-centric in the GTHL, people have differing views of what that means. But I think when you get right down to it, when on the committee that I was working at, I think everyone could agree that you need to focus on fun and you need to focus on the player. And so we really looked at those two things and how do you do that? And, in keeping it fun, there's figuring out what is fun and making sure it's fun for the kids versus fun for the parents, right? The parents and the kids enjoy being in the moment. Very often you will drive home with your child in the car, and as a coach, I know this, you're lamenting over a loss, let's say, and you'll say to my son or my daughter, how was that game? Oh, it was so great. Did you see that great play I did? And, you ask them, what was the score? We tied, we won, and as you get older, obviously it becomes more and more competitive, but there certainly is that whole thing about being there. That's really fun. And I think we've seen that even in COVID, where people are just enjoying still getting together with their team on Zoom. There are no games, and it's a shame, but that still is fun. So, and how do you make it more fun when you develop all players? That was a lot of conversation that we had. And that's something, again, that's been already brought through in the GTHL. It's already looked at in other sports like soccer, where you have a lot of time around development, less time at games, and development for all players, right? It's development for your best player, your worst player. It's development for your house league and all the way up through the ranks. And so, that's something that people are really starting to get their minds around, and that it's well documented that, if you spend more time with development, your games will be better and things will be more fun. The other thing we've already seen in changes is the CDS, right? That's a big step towards development for younger players. So, we looked at greater diversity and more inclusion as well. And again, to make it more fun, you have more people, you have more representation, people feel more comfortable coming to the rink. You might have a buddy system, which might be new for newcomers. You might have a buddy system for someone who's just never played hockey before. It's intimidating, right? It's intimidating coming to the rink. And I think everyone can decide, everyone can agree on these big ideas. And so what the real thing now is the implementation and the adaptation. And so, there's been, like you were saying, Peter, there's been a lot of work done on the front end, and now it's really up to the clubs and the people to put aside maybe some of their differing views and to look at, okay, how do we bring this and how do we implement it? And there may need to be help from the GTHL, because lots of the organizations, at North Toronto and at Leaside, we're very lucky. We have a very deep set of pool of volunteers. Not every organization has that. And also, some of them are more progressive. Some of them are focusing more on different things. And so it's going to be, again, a joint effort through implementation and adaptation and adaptation. So hopefully this next step, which is really important, and there has been a little bit of time to deal with it because of COVID. Hopefully now, as we go to the finish line, and these things get implemented, we can really see the benefits of all this time that's been spent on doing this transition game. And the GTHL can continue creating positive change.
That's great work. And just so people watching outside Toronto, CDS is a local league, entry level, kept it very low cost, travel wise. It's a great little loop, and it's for kids that are getting into hockey, just in case anyone's wondering. So Stephanie, everyone's talking about development, and every now and then I'll accidentally pick up the phone at work, and it's a coach complaining that he isn't certified, and it's a he. Notice I said he. I didn't say It's usually a coach saying, I'm not certified, or why do I need to get certified? I did a course 5 years ago. I mean, development is always changing. Are coaches in a mode here where they understand that they need to change with the game?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're seeing that. Hockey Canada is always updating their coaching development, the resources and the clinics that we offer. So part of my role is planning and scheduling the coach clinics that we offer. So whether that's in the introductory side on the coach 1, coach 2 level side, or on the competitive side in the development 1. And then also on top of that, there's professional development and instructional stream where it's really teaching the individual skill and whatnot on that side. And then the professional development, recently we've, I think what's been changing as well is running clinics. Like we had a You Can Play session. It's an organization wanting to become kind of creating hockey more to become more of an inclusive environment and really showing our coaches that's the way of the future. So yeah.
So Stephanie, how do we get more moms that play hockey, know the game? How do we get them into a coaching clinic to say, you know what, I want to take over a team? It doesn't have to be a girls team or boys team. Like we said earlier, it could be co-ed. How do we get those female hockey players with their experience into a coaching clinic?
That's a good question. We have been trying to figure that one out. In the 1920 season, the GTHL, we ran a women's only clinic. So that was the first ever clinic that we had ever done, a coach level 1. And we got a lot of feedback. There was a lot of interest in it. And I think that was a way to get some women into just the coaching clinic and entry level clinic. And we're looking to grow on that in the future in the coming years. So.
Awesome. Now, Susan, you're part of a program called FAME that I would love for you to expand upon. I know it's on hiatus or you're trying to bring it back, but I read about it. I mean, I'm a young son, so I mean, I read about saying this is fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit more about FAME?
Yeah, sure. So I was a national team and Olympic athlete when I was younger in the sport of sailing. So I campaigned for the 92 and 96 Olympics. And back in the day, when I was on the Ontario team and a provincial athlete before I was a national team athlete, the Ontario Sports Federation had a program called FAME. And FAME stands for Female Athletes Motivating Excellence. And it's an incredible program. I'm going to date myself, but it was a program that was done 30 years ago, and so ahead of its time. And I really think it's something that needs to come back in sport. But basically, what it was the Ontario Sports Federation partnered with public schools. And associations, and basically all of the Ontario female athletes who were part of FAME would get asked to speak. I flew to Thunder Bay. I grew up in Sudbury, so there wasn't a lot of athletes in the north. So I went to Thunder Bay, I went to Wawa, North Bay, like traveled everywhere and did speaking engagements to all of these elementary and high schools. And basically it's about sharing our stories and why girls should get into sport, and telling our story to motivate them to get into soccer, get into hockey, or get into something. So what was also awesome is we got paid. So it went into your fund. Back then you could be I was a gold carded athlete. When you're a gold carded athlete, there's gold, silver, and bronze. And basically your funds went to help pay for your education. And then the dollars that you brought in, because when you hit the national team and you're campaigning for the Olympics, it gets very costly. So what was great about these speaking engagements is it went into your fund to help pay for your sports training or what you were doing. So I just think it's a great example of giving back and leveraging athletes to inspire the next generation.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great work. Now, Erin, you also work with Stepstones for Youth, a great organization. You want to let us know a little bit about that?
Sure. Stepstones for Youth is an organization that helps youth coming out of the child welfare system. So we provide preventative services to help youth be successful as they come out of the child welfare system, complete high school, provide basic needs, especially during COVID, food, those types of things, housing subsidies. And as part of this program as well, we have a camp that for girls who are ages 6 to 15 years old who would have gone through trauma or be disadvantaged in another way. And this is an amazing opportunity for them to go to camp, which they would not otherwise have, and experience, some of the self-esteem building type activities, and just open themselves up to things that they wouldn't otherwise experience, like sports. There's also a literacy piece. So I'm really fortunate to be able to volunteer at, in this organization. I'm on the board and help with the community building. This is a community builder in the GTA, and it really is helping some of the most vulnerable people in the GTA.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, Stephanie, the GTHL has our rookie camp program, which I usually need to recover for 2 days from tying all those kids' skates that somehow I always show up at the right or wrong time. Tell us about the rookie camp program, because the last time we were out there, I saw more girls than boys. I saw more enthusiasm from girls than boys, especially when one of the girls said her dad couldn't believe she would get to play hockey, being a first generation Canadian. I mean, this rookie camp program, I mean, I would love to do it in 50 places, but tell us about the program and the success we're having with it.
Yeah, so the program is part of our outreach, where we go into a community that might be underserved and might they might not get the opportunity to try hockey. So we go into the community, we have kids come to the rink, we fully equip them. It's a learn to play for 6 or 8 weeks program, and we equip them, we help them get all their equipment on and out onto the ice, and teach them the basic skills of hockey. So it's exciting. We have done it for a few years now. Hopefully we'll get back to it after all of this COVID going on. But it's a great way to introduce the kids to hockey. And then we've had some kids have interest and they end up signing up for a house league. So it's a really great program.
Well, it's great to see them show up to play. I mean, having a girl tell me that her dad never thought she could play hockey in Canada, I mean, it makes me laugh, but it kind of makes me sad as well sometimes, Steph, as the people we meet. So, Susan, as we bring everything together here, I mean, we've celebrated International Women's Day. I've heard this phrase a few times, and Erin's probably used it, Steph's probably used it. Hockey players are hockey players, no matter what. Is this a good way for us to recruit more girls to get involved in hockey, Susan?
The quote is hockey players are hockey players?
Yep, regardless of your gender, where you're from, a hockey player is a hockey player.
Yeah, I think it is, because it to me, hockey players are hockey players is a little bit more inclusive, right? It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. If you have a love of a game, that's what unites us, right? And I think, a hockey player, it doesn't matter if you're a player or a fan, right? It's something that unites us all in terms of the love of the game. So, I think it's important. I even look at the PWPHA in terms of what they're doing in their Stick in the Ground campaign. And just seeing so many male, well, they all are male, but the NHL players putting a stick in the ground and wearing those sweatshirts with pride to show their support for female hockey players and their right to be professional athletes too. So I agree, hockey players are hockey players is a great way to recruit.
Yeah, and Erin, is that a good way? I mean, Susan summed it up. I know you've also told me about a great group of women that have taken up the game when they become hockey mothers and put on skates. I mean, are we going to recruit more hockey players by telling the moms, hey, you need to get on the ice as well every now and then?
I think it's all good. Yeah, definitely. I think, it's amazing the opportunities that you have now as a woman to play hockey. It starts, as a female. It starts as a very young girl, and you can join almost at any time. And, in some ways it's probably better than as a male hockey player, because there's no expectation. You can join, there are leagues now for women's leagues, beginner women's leagues. I know a lot of women, both with players and with kids who play, and even those who had just wanted to play hockey because they've always seen it, or their brothers played and they couldn't play, or they weren't allowed to play, start later in life. And it's a great game. And the more people you have who are playing, the better it is for the game. So I love the hockey players are hockey players, because it is totally true. And whether you're a girl, a boy, whatever, you're all the same when you get on the ice, right?
Right. And Stephanie, that last season that kind of ended, you were coaching a female hockey team here. Where are all these girls now with this year off? Are they knocking on the door saying, let's get out on a pond here? I mean, are they missing hockey? I know they're missing their coach, but are they missing hockey? I mean, you had a great 1920 season at Leaside. You worked with the Scarborough Sharks in the past. I mean, where do these hockey players go now? I mean, female or male with this year off? Are you worried they might not come back?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a worry that they might not come back, but I do think there was so many opportunities over the past season. Even though they couldn't get on the ice, that they had part of a season on the ice. I know in the girls' system they were able to get on the ice a little bit, but over Zoom, I think Erin mentioned earlier, that's a great tool that I know a lot of the players were able to meet up with their coaches and teammates through Zoom, doing workouts virtually, and that sort of thing. So I think there was a lot of opportunity there.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Well, Susan Irving, Erin, Needra, Stephanie Hyde, I really appreciate your time in hockey, and of course today with International Women's Day. And I really look forward to the day that we can meet in a rink. The coffee's probably a little off. The Zamboni's late on the ice. That referee we don't like might be on the ice. I look forward to the day that we get to see you in the rink and catch up and talk hockey.